Welcome back from the break. Now it's time to listen to a few senior sports executives talk about live sports and the comeback. Today's panel is moderated by Bob Wallace of Thompson Coburn. Bob is the chairman of the firm's sports law group. He spent 16 years with the St. Louis Rams, serving as the team's executive vice president and general counsel. During his 30-year career in professional football, Bob was one of the highest-ranking African-American club executives in the NFL. And now, over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Bill, for that nice introduction. Welcome to our keynote panel entitled Live Sports, The Comeback. Today we have with us ARJUN CHOWDRI, who is Chief Innovation Officer of PGA of America, JULIAN, who's Head of Digital Business Initiatives and Esports for Formula One, and JEAN-BAPTISTE ALLIOT, JB, who is the Head of Innovation Strategy for UEFA. Let's just start up at the top a little bit, and maybe each of you can just give me a brief introduction about your role with your company and what you do. So how about we start off with you, ARJUN?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Bob, for having us all here today. So at the PGA of America is the easiest way to think about it is to think about the white space that we're not exploring and try to figure it out. So that varies. That includes our international work. We had traditionally been a domestic company, so trying to think through our international strategies. It'll include acquisitions or investments, or even things like we've recently decided to move our headquarters to Texas, so the bidding out process of that. So it's really anything that's not kind of core or traditional to our organization, and try to explore it and see if we can build it out.
JULIAN?
Yeah, sure. So I look after all of Formula One's esports business. So everything that has to do with our video game and a wheel and a pedal and simulator. So virtual racing within Formula One. I also look after our wider digital strategy and support with the digital strategic planning process. So across all of our digital touch points and products as well. I joined Formula One in 2017. So as part of the transformation, I suppose, that Liberty brought over when they bought over Formula One back then, to help set up the digital department. And as part of that journey, I think specifically around esports, that has been one of our fastest growing segments, I would say, within digital for sure. And it's an area that I look after.
And JB, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you for having me here. JB, so I've been working at UEFA for more than 6 years now. Multiple positions for the last 3-4 years was mainly around the UEFA strategy. So the strategy for the entire organization, and within the intelligence center, you have strategy, data, and innovation now. So for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been really involved into leading the UEFA Innovation Hub. Long story short, it's not just focusing on digital or technology. Obviously, it plays a major role and it influences also the future of sports and entertainment. But the way we look at innovation is more how you can remain relevant or how you can future-proof yourself. So the goal, let's say, of the UEFA Innovation Hub is to make sure that we are a vehicle to enable UEFA to achieve its strategy. So it's both internal but also external focus in terms of value creation.
You know, it's very interesting. We have a panel of 3, and 2 of you have the title of Chief Innovation Officer. Is that a new kind of strategy approach that companies are taking? How did that come about?
I think generally speaking in the sports world, it is a newer title, right? I think it's being considered a more important title, probably to JB's point, to help the organization. To sit there and kind of think about things that not everybody is thinking, and there's not necessarily time on everybody else's plate to do that. For our organization's completely new role, it was more of a natural evolution of my last role, which was leading corporate strategy and international, and it was kind of, I was doing this anyways in terms of kind of creating white spaces, and as our CEO came in, I think or our new CEO came in, he just wanted to empower that opportunity more.
So do you view that strategy is different than innovation? Are those different roles? Are they same? Are they kind of on top of each other?
I do view them as different. I do view them as complementary, right? Because I think, you got to do a certain amount now and a certain amount for the future, right? Percentage wise, and each organization is a little bit different from that perspective. I do a little bit of both. I still do a decent amount of our kind of long-term strategic planning work within the scope of my existing responsibility.
Do you guys think that sports has gotten better in looking ahead instead of just dealing with the moment? Are we approaching problems and issues more strategically now?
As much as it's getting like more and more professional, I would say yes. But I think it's just a matter of time and how you can equip yourself. And for big sports organization, it's also like it's a huge change. It's change management at the end of the day. So we're all looking strategically in the future, and I think it was the case as well in the past. It's just like to which extent you need to be involved and how much you do it yourself, or how much you create these kind of strategic collaborations to be better in terms of delivering new product. The thing is, the pace of the change has just like dramatically changed. Like it has gone quicker and quicker. And with COVID-19, I mean, we can just see an acceleration of where the value is created. So it's just a matter of like trying to catch it better and to try to maximize the opportunities, I would say.
So you're the first one to mention the COVID-19. We all are living through that globally right now. When did your organization decide that they had to stop live play and start dealing with this pandemic? Why don't we start off with you, ARJUN?
This is a matter of public health policy and safety. So I don't think it was any of our organization's decision to be able to make it, right? It was in the interest of a global citizenship, right? So we ourselves as it relates to events. I mean, I think the first major golf event to stop wasn't ours that we ran, but was the Players Championship by the PGA Tour, and that closed during the middle of the event, which was interesting, and I think is the right decision that they certainly made, and a tough decision. That standpoint, again, that was dictated by what was in the best interest of public health, right? Not necessarily us, choosing that. But I think what we've done as a management team is we meet every morning, or we had, especially during that period of time, for a couple hours, and hit through a couple key bricks. One of them was events. One of them was our people. One of them was our membership, because we are a trade association at our core. Another one was programs, and we talked through each one of them. And the real thought was, do you cancel? Do you postpone? Or do you delay a decision every kind of time? Because with COVID-19, and that continues to be the case, is there's a lack of clarity of information. And every day it feels like there's more information. Either it's less clear or it's more clear. But if you can delay decisions or to further out, it usually gets you to a better point. So that's kind of been our general standpoint. So yeah, we continue to do that event by event.
But you guys have come back a little bit and are doing more live events right now, although not with crowds, without crowds. Yeah. And how do you feel that's going?
Yeah, so golf is one of the more fortunate sports, both from a professional level and a recreational level, where there is an opportunity to have them played, again, both professionally and recreationally, in a responsible and a socially distant manner, right? So we've been able, the organizations from a professional perspective have been able to create, in concert with public health officials, in concert with local governments, kind of rules and procedures that we would hold to create bubbles. Are they perfect? No, unfortunately not. We wish they were, but we're evolving and trying to. And then on the recreational standpoint, golf has actually had an opportunity during this time, sadly to say, because it's something that people can do to get reprieve during what's a very stressful time. And so you see a lot of people golfing, or as I golfed with a colleague yesterday that has the office up here in Massachusetts, and we could stay 6 feet away plus the whole time, and we were outdoors, right? But we could still have really engaging conversations. So yeah, it's tough. We're still learning, right? We're still evolving kind of the procedures. I think it's going well. I think for people at home, it gives them a sense of normalcy and a sense of reprieve to watch live sports. So I feel that's strong. We've done a lot of programming around charity too during that as well.
You might not want to hear this, but I can't wait for tomorrow with Tiger coming back. I'll spend part of the day watching a lot of golf over the weekend. And you're right, with the live sports, it's we're not watching The Last Dance only. Now we can watch something where the result is there. Formula One, tell me a little bit about that. You guys, like golf a little bit, are a little separate. Your participants are separate from your fan base. When did you guys decide that you were going to stop doing that, and when will you get back to opening it up a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, for us, because, the nature of being a global sport, we have races all around the world. And I think that when COVID-19 sort of started getting really bad, particularly in China, that was our first race, the Chinese Grand Prix, that was the first race to get postponed. And I think that was back in January. And I think when that happened, I think that there was a lot of work that actually had been done or started to become done to try and figure out how we're going to start navigating, the possibility of having postponed races. So immediately for the Chinese Grand Prix, knowing that it was going to be postponed, we actually looked towards our digital innovations and seeing how we could actually help plug that gap. And very quickly, we came up with a proposition to put on a virtual Chinese Grand Prix for that weekend. And then, it escalated, right? It became really, really bad very, very quickly. And then suddenly we were in Australia for our first, real life Grand Prix. And on the Friday, we had to announce that actually we had to, cancel the Grand Prix. And then straight after that, Vietnam and Bahrain were also announced to be postponed. And then a whole slew of races as well. It was a huge domino effect. And I think that it was apparent at that time that, the situation that we're in, and it wasn't a special situation, the whole industry was going through it. Everyone had to figure out how are we going to navigate this period, which, our core product, which is in our case, the racing, would have to go dark in response to COVID-19. And we were actually very quick to pick up on our esports product. So we have a product that we have been investing in since 2017. When we decided that we would jump into the world of esports and actually create a competitive championship on our video game. And we use that to basically plug the gap. So we organized what we call the virtual Grand Prix. So in every weekend that we were supposed to have a Grand Prix that was either postponed or canceled, we instead had a virtual Grand Prix on the video game and had our Formula One drivers compete against each other on that video game. And in many ways, actually, we're quite lucky as a sport sort of being in the intersection with the virtual world or esports, because at the very, very top level, our best virtual athletes or esports athletes, they compete with a wheel and with a pedal and with a simulator. So that blurring of lines between sort of real and virtual is very real for our sport. So we were able to actually bring our professional Formula One drivers and have them play the video game on a wheel, on a pedal, on a simulator, and actually perform really, really well. So we created a series around our video game to basically plug the gap, and everyone could take part remotely. Everyone was taking part from different parts of the world, and we're creating a virtual race to kind of entertain the fans, as well as deliver value for our sponsors, our broadcast partners during the time. I think that it's been very, very well received. We had over 30 million people tune in to our virtual Grand Prix. We had, upwards of 695 million social media impressions. It was our biggest esports endeavor to date. And it's helped us plug the gap and keep us a little bit, keep a couple of lights on during this time, and also help deliver some, as ARJUN says, the role of sport is to provide relief or to provide some sort of escapism for people. And we felt like if our main product in real life Formula One wasn't available, we could still do that with our virtual product in Formula One esports. We're back racing again. We just completed our second our second real life Grand Prix in Austria last weekend, and we're going back racing again this weekend in Hungary albeit behind closed doors. So we're slowly, I think trying to get back to a little bit more, a little bit of a sense of normality. But, I think that is still a journey. And I think a lot of the learnings that we've actually taken from our virtual Grand Prix will serve us well as we start to adapt to, this quote unquote new normal.
Right. Well, great. Thanks. And you sort of delved into my next question, but before I ask JB to answer that question, I want him to sort of talk about the soccer world, and probably more than any sport, soccer's crowd is so important to what's going on. The crowd participation at soccer matches, especially in Europe, is spectacular. Talk about how when you guys decided to go dark, when you decided to come back, and how you're embracing the virtual world to improve supplement your product.
Yeah. So on our side, I mean, I will refer it to football. Sorry, guys, but soccer is not the way I say it. It's real football. So
I apologize.
I will talk about football. No worries, mate. It's like I'm European, so I need to say it's football, and that's the real football. But how we have reacted to it, it's on our side is like it started to start with our national leagues. So it was not us directly. It was not our competitions where it stopped by a round of 16. But what we did, the main decision that we took very quickly was to postpone the Euro 2020. So this is our flagship event. It's more for the national team. It's not the club competition. It's national team there. And what we did was, despite all the losses or all the consequences for us, we said we need to preserve the ecosystem. So to a certain extent, we were freeing the whole calendar and all the fixtures for the leagues and all the clubs to be able to play in June. So this is why we have not yet started on our side, UEFA. So national leagues have restarted. So with the Bundesliga, so the German league has started first in May. And now we've seen La Liga, we've seen the Premier League. So you have all the big fives except France, for which they have stopped completely the championship this season. But what we did was just to allow them to be able to finish the season, because we wanted to make sure like the whole ecosystem could survive this crisis, because without being able to terminate, this would have impacted a lot financially everybody involved. So this is what we did, and now we're mostly preparing with our sponsors, with the broadcasters, for our return to play, which will take place like in 15 days. I mean, it's in August, so we'll have a lot of matches back to back, but we're really looking forward to being live again. And I think we did a bit like PGA or Formula One. I mean, like everyone, we tried to use the content that we had. So we had archives. We had ambassadors, and so we were creating some new contents on UEFA TV just to try to have some kind of watch together, some kind of replay. We also put on air some of the key highlights or key moments of the UEFA Champions League. We had the Euro coming on as well. So we just did the esports competition as if the Euro was keep going on. So I think we had a lot of activation. Our goal and primary, let's say, objective was really to go back live. It will be still without fans, so no fans in the stand. So we are also looking with our partner where we can be innovative in terms of at-home fans and also in-stadium fans, to try to have the look and feel, which is not an empty stadium. Like you said, the crowd, the atmosphere. What makes the UEFA Champions League unique is just like on Tuesday or Wednesday night, you just tune in and it's just crazy. I mean, the atmosphere is nothing comparable to any weekend championship. And here it's true that that's something that we need to make sure we address in terms of how we can make sure the experience, even for the players, how they feel that they are playing a Champions League match and not just a random championship or a FA Cup or whatever national cup match. So this is really something we're looking at the moment, and we're definitely looking forward to being back in August.
Well, good. Arjun, tell me, is there, from the time that you had off and now you're coming back, what innovations can the customer, the fan, expect to see? Anything that we can look forward to?
And we've actually worked with the CDC and a bunch of other health experts on a whole program called Back to Golf, really to help golf facilities and golfers play recreationally in a responsible way. So seemingly simple things have helped the golf economy, which again is in the US is at about an $84 billion industry, sustain and keep more than lights on and bring in new customers to the game, which maybe wouldn't have otherwise have experienced or have the game and are coming back now.
Julian, how about at Formula One? Is there anything that we can look forward to seeing? I know you talked about your esports and your virtual presence. Anything to add to that portion, or that the customer will see?
There are a lot of different things that we've had to do to adapt to this new way of working, to go back racing in a safe way. This year is the first time that we've, ever kind of produced our races remotely. So the races take place locally, but then, all of the production actually take place in our London office here in London. So I think that for us is, I think a huge difference. And the team have done a terrific job, I would say, over the course of the past 2 Grand Prix to really deliver a fantastic broadcast product, despite the challenges of having to do that remotely. And then I would say that obviously in terms of going back racing, there are a lot of different things that have had to be done. I think to kind of come back racing safely, things from regular testing to social distancing to sort of isolated travel. A lot of those things are new processes that I think are, that are in response to the situation that we're in and absolutely necessary. And then on the other end, or the other category, as I tend to touch it, is sort of what have we learned during this time, as we have gone dark and have operated and accelerated our digital and esports activities. What have we learned during that time that we can actually implement in the short, medium, and long term for our F1 sort of digital strategy? And I'd say that there are several things. One thing really powerful that we managed to see was that with our esports activities, we were really able to unmask our Formula One stars. I think as a sport, we have the challenge just by design of the way our sport works, that our athletes compete behind a helmet. So when they're competing and when they're performing, you're not able to really necessarily really engage with them in the same way that you would with other sports, where you can see athletes wearing their hearts in their sleeves and their raw emotions on display. But during this time, we really were able to kind of unmask that. Our Formula One drivers were competing in our virtual Grand Prix and streaming on Twitch and streaming their lives on Twitch for a lot of them. And I think that being able to kind of bring our fans closer to the stars of our sport is really one of the fundamental challenges of motorsports in general. And I think that there's a real opportunity through gaming and esports to start to kind of break down those borders and break down those barriers. And then the other thing that we saw that was also really, really amazing, I think I would say, in terms of output, was that we were able to actually use our esports property to engage with wider sports, to cross-pollinate with other sports. We had celebrities and stars from different sports. From the football world, we had Sergio Aguero, we had Aubameyang, we had Thibaut Courtois coming into our sport and playing the Formula One game because they're huge Formula One fans and racing against Formula One drivers. And in the golf world, we had Ian Poulter participate as well. And we even extended that beyond sports. We had wider entertainment. We had Liam Payne from One Direction participate, as we had Luis Fonsi, huge superstar and Despacito fame. So we were able to actually use our opportunities to actually widen the cross-pollination of our audience and get new audiences to watch Formula One. And we had our biggest ever sort of comeback, I would say, when we came back on racing a couple of weeks ago in Austria. That was our biggest week on digital ever. And then again, we actually surpassed that the weekend after in the Styrian Grand Prix, where we again beat those records. So I think a lot of the numbers that we're seeing now I think can be, I think it's difficult to attribute what percentage that necessarily is, but I think that's a huge learning for us, that there is a real opportunity for us to kind of open up our sport, whether it's directly with our drivers through, unveiling the mask, so to speak, or actually, the wider cross collaboration or cross pollination opportunities there are with other sports as well.
In 6 months or a year, whenever we go back to what we think is normal, what would you consider a successful lesson that you've learned from the shutdowns that we've had? What would you like to, when you say, well, we did that, we learned, and we made it better?
I think personally, I'd love to see us embracing more of the opportunities that we have within gaming and esports to get our real life Formula One drivers involved, as well as wider celebrities who are Formula One fans. And it doesn't necessarily have to limit the opportunities. I think widen beyond just having to have activations at a Grand Prix, because all of a sudden with, esports, you have remote solutions in order to do that. And I think that's really, really exciting. And being able to kind of integrate that as part of our wider kind of fan engagement strategy, I think is really, really, it's really exciting.
Good. JB, could you talk to us a little bit about the Reimagine Football initiative?
Yeah, so, on our side, the innovation side of things, we've launched this Reimagine Football, like anybody else, any sports organization. We're looking at solutions outside to help us cope with the new reality, I would say. Obviously, like the other experts and the other sports organizations have just said, like on our side, digital is really the area where you can have like tangible output quite quickly. So this is where we've been the most innovative. I think one area which is not necessarily of interest for people or for casual fans outside is the operations. So I would like to stress that as well, because for UEFA or for maybe the PGA or for Formula One, deploying a full live event with 10 times or 20 times less people, like no camera crew, the broadcasters, the sponsors. You have to rethink the whole process on how you deliver a match with very few people, all of this being done remotely. So I think this is where the innovation was lying very short term, in terms of how do you adapt quickly, how do you put together a return to play, how flexible and agile you are, and how quickly you can adapt new technologies to bring everything remotely. So this is something really important. Maybe no one has really seen it, but from a sport organization and a sport organizer side, I think that's very important. Of course, like I was saying, digitally, you can see the digital layer, or you can see the watch together. If you look at some football matches today, you can hear also the noise or the chants from the crowd, which is bring to you, even though there is no one in the stands. So that's the kind of things where you can be innovative. But I think where I believe, or where I hope there will be the huge impact in terms of innovation, is that for once, the industry, football and potentially sports properties, sports organizers have been facing the same challenges at the same time. Usually there has always been different roadmap, different strategic priorities. And for once, you need to align. For once, and Reimagine Football is kind of, we've come together with a national league, with different clubs, with different partners, to look at similar issues, because we actually face all the same challenges. And today we do, all of us. And so this is why, for me, I think the COVID-19 is really the kind of, maybe the opportunity or the window for new strategic collaborations to come. So I don't think the real innovation has arrived yet, or I think it's very incremental innovation, very on the margin. But what I hope for is that in the next 6 to maybe 12 months, we've been able to talk to broadcasters, to sponsors, to other sports properties, and maybe to rethink our product. And when I heard about Formula One, thinking of, oh yeah, but we had football players doing that. That's the future of sports. Like new stories, new compelling content. And it's not just football. It's football, it's lifestyle, it's how you enter within the gaming, within the music, within all this other industry, into what we call the new attention economy. And so to make sure you have the fans and the consumer, you just need to have the right products, to have the right content to make it engaging. And for that, I think like merging the different assets is key, and I hope that COVID-19 will help us in terms of fostering these kind of new initiatives or new ideas, and to have this kind of cross-organization, cross-sports, or maybe cross-channels activations in the future. And because we need to, actually.
Yeah, I'd like you all to answer. This is a kind of a two-part question because you've touched upon how the various sports are talking to each other. What have you learned from what some other sport has done that you could think would be a good idea to bring to your sport? And what have your fans taught you? And what has surprised you about the way they're consuming your sport, or what they want out of the sport during this period?
I actually think I look at other areas, like I'm looking at like farms, right? What are farmers doing to manage their crops and their ag spaces during a period of time where you can't get as many people out there? And why I say that is there's 14,000 golf facilities, in the U.S. and 16,000 golf courses in the U.S. And it's, in essence, it's a specialty crop, right? Grass is a specialty crop. And if you can't get as many people out there maintaining it on a day-to-day basis, how do you do it, right? So I was talking to a company as an example a couple of days ago that does basically a drone as a service, really for farms, that allow them to monitor, manage, maintain farms or small farms using drones, right? And the camera technology associated with that. So I think actually, although we should be looking at each other, I do think there's opportunity to look outside as well in terms of other industries and see what they're doing and what the opportunities are there. Just like you mentioned in production, right? What are the new technologies there?
I think for me personally, I actually tend to look a little bit more on the kind of digital esports side and what they're doing there, because I feel that they've been, just by nature of being a more nascent industry, obviously maturing very, very quickly, but just by being sort of earlier on in terms of that trajectory, there've been a lot more experimental sort of approaches been taken. And I think that the speed at which they've been able to kind of, we use the word agile a lot. I think the speed at which they've been able to kind of adapt, particularly in the kind of the, digital / esports world, has actually, in some ways been a lot faster than traditional sports, I would say. So I tend to kind of look at what the esports world is doing. And I think there are a lot of learnings we can do there. I mean, a couple of things that I personally really found very interesting. Fortnite, I think a couple of months ago, actually did a huge activation merging with the music industry. They had a Travis Scott concert within Fortnite. And I think that I kind of going back to this blurring of lines, and JB kind of touched on this new entertainment. What is this entertainment economy? What does that look like, right? And the blurring of lines between sport and wider entertainment, whether it's music or film or whatever. I think that's really interesting. And I think Epic Games have also started to look at opportunities to actually start having like movie screenings within the game, within Fortnite. I think like all of those sort of innovations and sort of breaking the mold of what it means to actually entertain an audience is really, really, I think, very admirable and very exciting. I think that challenges us to think and rethink how we think about entertaining our fans, and how we actually not just serve our fans what they want, but also start to anticipate what they may not know that they want and trying to provide that proactively.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I mean, for me, like when we're saying we try to future-proof ourselves or anything, is like we really need to understand that we are in an era of new fans. I mean, I don't know how you want to call it connected fans, but they want to participate. They are switching from one device to another. They are consuming different type of content. But in order to be relevant, you need to be personalized. You need to allow them also to create their own content. So UGC content is really important, and that's what we've seen as well during the COVID-19 phase. So for me, it's really important as a sports organizations to really understand this next wave and why we need to prepare for that. And so Fortnite is one example, but in the future, there might be other platforms coming in. There might be other blurred lines being crossed. And this is where football, but other sports with other athletes, with other singers, with movie characters, whomever, how you create new compelling stories and how you make sure you have your digital ecosystem ready and your infrastructure ready to actually optimize, know better your fans, but also have to push and activate better and engage with them. So I think that's really relevant. And for COVID-19, that was really interesting to see as well how the different sports organizations and people in this market were activating actually. And digital is for me the key for a new experience. So if you want to engage not only millennials, but because I'm already old, but if you want to have the Gen Z coming in and all the new generation, for me, experience is the next thing. You need to build that. And yeah, and I think COVID-19 again, for me, it's like sponsors, podcasters, all of them. I mean, all the people all our partners we're talking to, like, I've also experienced and realized it real time. Like for once we had to pause, and how do you activate? How do you make sure you keep on having rights? Or how do you make sure you keep having a value proposition even for them in this new reality? And so here, this is where I think that we have a huge part to play and maybe to come together to redefine a bit the new product, the new content, especially for the new generations.
What kind of advice can you give to our startup founders in these uncertain times? How do you stay focused and positive when there's so much unknown? And what advice can you give to this group to keep their teams motivated and moving forward?
I mean, when I look at different startups and we've been engaging, is really what's your value proposition and how quickly you can integrate within our ecosystem. I think a lot of startup funders, they come with their product, with their idea, and they do not necessarily understand or realize the ecosystem we're in. And so for us as any company, we need to provide, again, tangible output. We need to have a value in partnering with you. So the thing is, you need to understand our ecosystem. You need to understand where you can drive the value and how quickly you can integrate.
Well, I think for me, when you're operating in the startup space, that's already a very, very fast-paced landscape to be in. And particularly during this time where things change on a, week by week, let alone actually, day by day basis. I think that entrepreneurial spirit of being able to kind of adapt and be flexible, which I think all startups in order to thrive have, is going to be even more important. I think just keep the faith, right? Because I think everyone, startup or not, this is an incredibly difficult period for everyone navigating, but we will come out of it. And I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and just being sort of best equipped to be able to kind of, succeed once we do emerge from this crisis.
Well, I think this was a great discussion. I hope our audience enjoyed it. Of course, I want to thank our panelists. Your insights were wonderful. You made my job easy. I didn't have to ask that many questions because you guys took the questions that I asked and ran with it.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks, Stadia Ventures.
Now I'd like to throw it back to Bill Powell.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you to our esteemed panelists. So here's what's coming up. Next week, we are excited to host several hundred senior sports and esports executives and industry experts to help us judge the top 10 finalists for our 11th cohort. Judges will include folks from the organizations whose logos are present here, as well as from many others. Finalist pitch day for our 11th cohort is shaping up to be one of the most diverse yet. And now for a special thanks to all of our Stadia investors for accompanying us on this journey. Truly, without your support, we would not exist. And of course, let's not forget our amazing corporate partners, without whom none of this would be possible. And that concludes Stadia's 10th Global Demo Day. Thanks for taking time to join us.